The kingdom of Zambura was a land of beauty and strength, ruled by the wise and just King Adeola and his beloved Queen Nafisa. They were adored by their people, and when the queen gave birth to a baby girl, the entire kingdom rejoiced. The little princess, Nyah, was a symbol of hope and prosperity, but not everyone in the royal court shared in the joy. Lady Heir, a noble woman with a heart full of envy, had long desired power. She had hoped to gain the king's favor, but with the birth of Nyah, her dreams of influence faded. As she watched the royal family bask in happiness, resentment grew inside her. She convinced herself that the child did not deserve the throne, that she was the one meant to shape Zambura's future. One dark night, while the palace slept, Heir put her wicked plan into motion. She bribed a disloyal servant to help her steal the infant princess. Wrapped in a simple cloth, Nyah was taken from the palace, her royal cradle left empty. Heir carried the baby deep into the wilderness, far beyond the reach of the kingdom's soldiers. The moon shone down on the dense forest as she reached a desolate village. There, among the thick trees and silent huts, she left the helpless baby, believing the wild would soon claim her life. With no remorse, she turned and vanished into the night, convinced that she had erased the princess from history forever. But fate had other plans. In the early hours of the morning, a poor woman named Mama Rudo was walking along the narrow village path, carrying a small bundle of firewood. She had lived in the village for many years, surviving through hard work and kindness. As she passed by the edge of the forest, she heard a faint cry. Curious and concerned, she followed the sound and found a tiny baby wrapped in a simple cloth, lying helplessly on the ground. The child's dark eyes blinked up at her, and her little hands reached out as if begging for warmth. Mama Rudo's heart ached. She had no children of her own, and though she was poor, she could not leave the baby to die. Gently, she picked up the child and cradled her in her arms. "You are a gift," she whispered. "I will call you Nyah." She took the baby home, fed her warm milk, and wrapped her in a soft cloth. From that moment on, Nyah became her daughter. Years passed, and Mama Rudo loved Nyah as if she were her own flesh and blood. She taught her kindness, patience, and the value of hard work. Nyah grew into a bright and cheerful girl, always helping with chores and bringing laughter to their small home. She never knew where she had come from, or that she was different from the other village children. To her, Mama Rudo was her real mother, and the small hut they shared was home. But happiness does not always last forever. One fateful day, Mama Rudo fell ill. Despite Nyah's care and the village healer's efforts, she grew weaker with each passing day. Before she took her last breath, she held Nyah's hand and whispered, "You are special, my child. Never forget that." Nyah did not understand those words at the time, but they stayed in her heart. After Mama Rudo's death, her greedy sister, Mama Sefu, came to take over the house. Unlike Mama Rudo, she had no kindness in her heart. She saw Nyah not as a child to be loved, but as a burden, and worse, a servant. From that day on, Nyah's life changed. Mama Sefu made Nyah do all the household chores, sweeping the floors, fetching water, cooking, and washing clothes. While Nyah worked from morning until night, Mama Sefu's own daughter, Zala, lived in comfort. She wore fine clothes, ate the best food, and never lifted a finger to help. Mama Sefu treated Zala like a princess and Nyah like a slave. Nyah never understood why she was treated so cruelly. She often lay awake at night, staring at the roof of the small hut, wondering why fate had been so unfair. She believed she was an orphan, abandoned by her real parents, unwanted and unloved. She had no idea that she was, in fact, the lost princess of Zambura, the daughter of a king and queen who had never stopped searching for her. Nyah's life became one of endless suffering. From the moment the sun rose until late at night, she worked without rest. Mama Sefu made her sweep the floors, fetch water from the river, cook meals, wash clothes, and tend to the animals. No matter how hard she worked, it was never enough. If a single plate was not cleaned properly, or if the firewood was not stacked just right, Mama Sefu would scold her harshly. Meanwhile, Zala, Mama Sefu's daughter, lived like a queen. She never lifted a finger to help. She wore bright, colourful dresses made from the finest fabric. While Nyah's clothes were old and torn, Zala ate fresh fruit, warm bread, and meat, while Nyah was given only leftovers, cold porridge or scraps of food that no one else wanted. If Nyah ever complained or asked for more, Mama Sefu would glare at her and say, "You should be grateful I even feed you." The villagers saw how badly Nyah was treated, but no one dared to speak up. Mama Sefu was a woman with a sharp tongue, and most people feared her anger. Some pitied Nyah, giving her small bits of food when no one was looking, but no one could change her fate. Despite everything, Nyah did not let cruelty harden her heart. She found comfort in small things: a cool breeze on a hot day, the laughter of children playing in the village, or the kindness of an old woman who sometimes gave her an extra piece of bread. But deep inside, she felt as if she did not belong. Some nights, after finishing her chores, she would sit outside and stare at the stars. She did not know why, but she often dreamed of a grand palace with golden walls and silk curtains. She imagined herself dressed in fine clothes, walking through halls filled with light. The dreams felt real, as if they were memories buried deep inside her. But when she woke up, she was still in the same small hut, still wearing rags, still nothing more than a servant. No matter how much Mama Sefu tried to break her spirit, a quiet voice inside Nyah always whispered, "You were meant for something more." But she had no proof, no answers, only a feeling that her true story was yet to be revealed. One hot afternoon, as the village bustled with activity, an old traveller named Baba Jengo arrived. He was a wise and well-travelled man, known for his deep knowledge of history and forgotten stories. Dressed in a faded robe with a wooden staff in hand, he moved slowly, his sharp eyes taking in everything around him. He had spent years journeying across the land, and now he had come to this small village seeking rest before continuing his travels. As he walked through the marketplace, he noticed a young girl carrying a heavy basket of firewood on her back. She looked tired. Her clothes were torn, and dust covered her feet. Yet there was something about her, something different. When she paused to wipe sweat from her forehead, Baba Jengo's eyes widened. On her right shoulder, partly hidden beneath her tattered dress, he saw a birthmark. It was not an ordinary mark. It was the emblem of the royal family of Zambura, a small crescent-shaped symbol that only the true heir of the kingdom would have. Baba Jengo felt his heart pound. Could it be? Could this poor girl be the lost princess of Zambura? He had heard whispers of the king and queen's missing daughter, stolen as a baby and never found. He had met royal scholars who described the birthmark in detail, and now he was seeing it with his own eyes. Curious, he approached the girl. "Child," he said gently, "what is your name?" She looked up, surprised that a stranger was speaking to her. "My name is Nyah," she said softly. "Where are your parents?" Baba Jengo asked. Nyah hesitated. "I don't know. Mama Rudo found me when I was a baby and raised me. But she passed away, and now I live with Mama Sefu." Baba Jengo frowned. Something was not right. He decided to speak to Mama Sefu himself. When he arrived at her hut, he found her sitting outside, watching over a pot of boiling stew. "Good woman," Baba Jengo said politely. "I have come to ask about the girl, Nyah. Where does she come from?" Mama Sefu's eyes narrowed. She did not trust strangers, especially ones who asked too many questions. "She was abandoned," she lied. "My sister Mama Rudo took pity on her and raised her. She is no one important, just an orphan with no past." Baba Jengo did not believe her. He had traveled enough to know when someone was hiding the truth. He glanced back at Nyah, who stood quietly in the distance, her face sad but strong. There was something royal in her posture, in the way she carried herself despite her suffering. Determined to uncover the truth, Baba Jengo decided to investigate further. If Nyah truly was the lost princess, then she deserved to know who she really was. And if Mama Sefu had been keeping her hidden all these years, justice would soon find her. Baba Jengo could not shake the feeling that Mama Sefu was hiding something. He had spent years learning to read people, and her eyes held a nervousness that only came with guilt. He decided to search for answers himself. If Nyah was truly the lost princess, there had to be proof somewhere. That evening, while the village was quiet, Baba Jengo visited the small hut where Mama Rudo had once lived. The place was old and worn, but it still held traces of the kind woman who had raised Nyah. He searched carefully, looking through old baskets and wooden boxes, hoping to find something, anything, that could reveal the truth. Then, Tucked away beneath a pile of faded cloth, he found a small leather pouch. His hands trembled as he opened it and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. The paper was old, its edges slightly torn, but the writing was clear. It was a letter from Mama Rudo herself. With the flickering light of a lantern, Baba Django read the words slowly. To my beloved Nyah, if you ever find this letter, know that you were never truly mine. I found you as a baby, left alone in the forest, and I could not let you die. I raised you as my own, but deep in my heart, I always knew you were special. The cloth you were wrapped in bore the royal emblem of Zambura. I do not know why fate brought you to me, but I believe you were meant for something greater. If ever a day comes when someone asks about your past, know that your true family may still be looking for you. Baba Django's heart pounded. This was it. This was the proof. The birthmark, the emblem on the cloth, and now this letter. All pointed to one truth. Nyah was not an orphan. She was not just a servant girl. She was the missing princess of Zambura. Without wasting a moment, Baba Django carefully folded the letter and placed it inside his robe. He had to move quickly. The king and queen had spent years searching for their daughter, and now, at last, she had been found. He set off at once, determined to bring the truth to the palace and reunite the lost princess with her real family. In the grand palace of Zambura, King Adeola and Queen Nafisa sat in their royal chambers, their hearts heavy with longing. Many years had passed since their baby daughter had been stolen, but they had never stopped searching for her. Every day, they hoped for a miracle, praying that one day she would return to them. The palace walls, though filled with gold and riches, felt empty without her laughter. Messengers had been sent to every corner of the kingdom, but no one had ever found a trace of the lost princess. The pain of not knowing if she was alive or dead weighed on the king and queen, but they refused to give up hope. They kept her memory alive, telling stories of her to their people and holding on to the dream that fate would bring her back. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a tired but determined Baba Django arrived at the palace gates. He demanded to see the king and queen at once, saying he carried news that would change their lives forever. The guards, sensing the urgency in his voice, quickly led him inside. When Baba Django stepped into the royal court, the king and queen rose from their thrones. "Who are you, traveller, and what news do you bring?" King Adeola asked, his deep voice filled with curiosity and caution. Baba Django bowed respectfully before them. "Your Majesty, I have journeyed far, and what I have discovered may bring you both great joy." He reached into his robe and carefully pulled out the old letter from Mama Rudo. This letter tells of a child, found many years ago, wrapped in royal cloth. She bears the birthmark of your family, the lost princess of Zambura. Queen Nafisa gasped, her hands covering her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "Where is she?" she whispered, her voice trembling with hope and fear. "In a small village, living as a servant," Baba Django said sadly. "She has suffered greatly, unaware of who she truly is." King Adeola clenched his fists. Anger burned in his chest at the thought of his daughter living in misery while they had searched endlessly for her. He turned to his royal guards, his voice firm and commanding. "Gather the best men at once, ride to the village, and bring my daughter home." The guards did not hesitate. Within moments, horses were saddled, swords were fastened to belts, and a group of warriors set out under the cover of night. Their mission was clear: find the lost princess and restore her to her rightful place in the kingdom. The village was quiet when the sound of galloping horses shattered the morning air. Dust rose as the royal guards rode in, their golden armor gleaming under the sun. The villagers watched in awe and fear, for it was rare to see the king's soldiers in such a small place. Whispers spread quickly. Why were the royal guards here? Who were they looking for? Mama Sefu was busy preparing food when she heard the commotion outside. She stepped out of her hut, wiping her hands on her apron, and gasped when she saw the warriors dismounting from their horses. Her heart pounded. Had she done something wrong? She had always been careful, always kept Nyah's past a secret. But now, fear clawed at her chest as one of the guards, a tall man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "We are here on the orders of King Adeola," he announced. "We seek a girl named Nyah. Bring her to us at once." Mama Sefu forced a smile, trying to keep her voice steady. "Nyah, she is just an orphan. A useless girl I took in out of pity. Why would the king be looking for her? The guard narrowed his eyes. We know the truth. We know she is not an orphan. We have proof that she is the lost princess of Zambura. Mama Sifu's face turned pale. Her legs felt weak, and she struggled to find words. That's impossible, she stammered. She's nothing but a servant. Before she could say anything more, Nyah stepped forward from behind the hut, her hands still covered in soap from washing clothes. She looked at the soldiers, confused and unsure. The moment the guards saw her, they froze. There was no doubt. It was her, the lost princess. Her eyes, her face, even the way she stood, it all reminded them of Queen Nafisa. And then they saw it, peeking from beneath her torn dress. The birthmark, the royal emblem. It is her, one of the guards whispered in awe. Mama Sefu's breath caught in her throat. She had spent years treating Nyah like dirt, thinking she was worthless. But now the truth was standing right in front of her. The girl she had forced to scrub floors, the girl she had beaten and insulted, was a princess. A real princess. Fear gripped her heart. If the king and queen found out how she had treated their daughter, what would they do to her? She wanted to run, to hide. But it was too late. Karma had finally caught up with her. Nyah sat on the horse between two royal guards as they rode away from the village. Her heart pounded with every step the horse took. Everything felt like a dream. One moment, she was scrubbing floors and living as a servant, and the next, she was being taken to the grand palace of Zambura. The guards treated her with kindness, speaking to her with respect, something she had never known before. She could hardly believe what was happening. As they entered the palace gates, Nyah's eyes widened. The golden walls stretched high into the sky, the grand entrance lined with statues of kings and queens before her. Servants rushed around, attending to nobles dressed in fine silks, and the scent of delicious food filled the air. It was nothing like the small, dusty village she had known all her life. She was led inside, where a group of palace attendants welcomed her with warm smiles. They took her to a beautiful chamber with soft cushions and golden mirrors. For the first time in her life, she was bathed in warm, scented water instead of washing in the cold river. Her rough, torn clothes were replaced with a flowing royal gown, embroidered with golden threads. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the girl staring back at her. The attendants brushed her hair, adorning it with delicate beads and gold pins. They placed a necklace around her neck, one that had been kept safe for her since she was a baby. As they worked, Nyah remained silent, overwhelmed by everything. Could this really be her life? Was she truly the lost princess of Zambura? Deep inside, a small voice whispered, "This is where you belong." When she was finally ready, the guards led her to the royal dining hall. The room was grand, with a long table covered in silver dishes and trays of delicious food. At the head of the table sat King Adeola and Queen Nafisa, their eyes filled with love and emotion. They had waited years for this moment. Nyah hesitated before stepping forward. She had spent her whole life eating leftovers, crouched in a corner while others feasted. Now, she was given a seat at the king's table. It felt unreal. As she sat down, the queen gently reached for her hand, squeezing it with warmth. "You are home now," Queen Nafisa whispered, her voice filled with tears. Meanwhile, back in the village, Mama Sefu and Zala were left in shock. The girl they had treated as nothing was now a princess. Everything they had taken from her, respect, kindness, love, was being returned to her in ways they could never have imagined. And for the first time in her life, Mama Sefu realized she had lost everything, while Nyah had gained the world. A few days after Nyah's return, King Adeola sent his royal guards back to the village with a final order: bring Mama Sefu to the palace. The news spread quickly, and the villagers gathered to watch as the once proud woman was taken away. She had spent years treating Nyah like a worthless servant, and now she was being dragged before the king himself. Fear filled her heart as she was forced onto a horse and taken to the grand palace of Zambura. When she arrived at the royal court, she was trembling. The room was vast, filled with nobles and advisors, all watching her with cold, judging eyes. At the far end of the hall sat King Adeola on his golden throne, his face stern and unreadable. Beside him, Queen Nafisa sat with quiet dignity, her eyes filled with pain. and standing between them, dressed in royal robes, was Nyah, the girl she had mistreated for so many years. Mama Sifu fell to her knees, her voice shaking. "Your Majesty, please forgive me," she cried. "I did not know who she was. I only did what I thought was right." King Adeola's eyes darkened. "Right," he thundered. "You took in a helpless child only to treat her as a slave. You stole her dignity, her happiness, and made her believe she was nothing. Even if she had not been my daughter, your cruelty was unforgivable." Mama Seifu sobbed, pressing her forehead to the cold floor. "Please, I beg you. I have nowhere else to go." Queen Nafisa spoke then, her voice calm but firm. "And where did Nyah have to go when you made her suffer? Where was her mercy when you denied her love and kindness?" Mama Sifu had no answer. She had never once cared about Nyah's pain, and now she was facing her own. King Adeola took a deep breath before delivering his final judgment. "You will be banished from Zambura. You will leave this kingdom today and never return. Just as you forced Nyah to live in loneliness and rejection, you shall now suffer the same fate." Guards stepped forward and took Mama Sefu by the arms. She screamed, pleaded, but there was no mercy left for her. As she was dragged away from the palace, she realized the truth. Her greed and cruelty had cost her everything. She had lost the comfort of the village, the respect of the people, and the chance to live in a kingdom ruled by the very girl she had mistreated. As the grand doors closed behind her, Nyah watched in silence. She felt no hatred, only a deep understanding of justice. The past could not be changed, but she knew one thing for sure. She would never let cruelty rule her heart as it had ruled Mama Sifu's. As the golden sun set over the kingdom of Zambura, the palace was filled with joy and celebration. After years of heartbreak and searching, King Adeola and Queen Nafisa finally had their daughter back. Nyah stood before them, still overwhelmed by the love in their eyes. For so long, she had believed she was an orphan, unwanted and forgotten. Now she knew the truth. She had always been loved, always been missed, and now she was home. Queen Nafisa could not hold back her tears as she wrapped her arms around Nyah. "My child," she whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. "We never stopped looking for you. Not a day passed that we did not pray for your return." King Adeola placed a protective hand on Nyah's shoulder. His voice filled with emotion. "You are strong, my daughter. You survived when the world was unkind to you, and now you will never be alone again." The palace erupted in celebration. The people of Zambura, overjoyed by the return of their lost princess, gathered in the grand courtyard to welcome her. Drummers played, dancers twirled, and the air was filled with music and laughter. A great feast was prepared, with tables overflowing with the finest food. Everywhere Nyah turned, she saw smiling faces, people cheering for her, calling her name. But even as she embraced her new life, she could not forget the years she had spent as a servant. She had known hunger, loneliness, and pain. She had been ignored, humiliated, and treated as if she were nothing. Now, standing in silk robes with a golden crown resting on her head, she knew that those experiences had shaped her. She would not let them make her bitter. Instead, she would use them to make her stronger. As she sat beside her parents at the royal table, she made a silent promise to herself. She would never forget where she came from. She would use her position not just to enjoy the riches of the palace, but to help those who were still suffering. Because she knew, better than anyone, what it meant to feel helpless. That night, as she lay in a soft bed for the first time in her life, Nyah closed her eyes with a peaceful heart. She had found her family, her home, and her place in the world. And this was only the beginning. As time passed, Nyah's heart grew stronger with each day. She had been given everything she could have dreamed of: family, love, and a place where she belonged. But she couldn't forget the life she had left behind. She couldn't forget the pain of living as an orphan, working endlessly without kindness, and feeling abandoned by the world. Nyah knew that she had been lucky to find a family who loved her, but many children and villagers still suffered, just like she once had. She made a vow to herself that she would never let anyone else feel as alone or hopeless as she had. She began to use her position as a princess to make a difference in the lives of the poor and orphaned children in Zambura. Nyah visited villages far and wide, where people still lived in hardship. She gave food to the hungry, built homes for the homeless, and even set up schools so children could learn. With her kindness and wisdom, she slowly but surely transformed the lives of those who had nothing. Every time a child smiled because they had a warm meal, or a family was able to live in a safe house, Nyah's heart swelled with happiness. Her actions spoke louder than words. As she traveled through the kingdom, people began to see her not just as a princess, but as a true leader. She listened to their problems, offered help, and always treated them with respect. She didn't think of herself as better than anyone. She saw everyone as equal and worked tirelessly to make sure no one was left behind. Nyah's compassion and wisdom were admired by all, and she quickly became known as the People's Princess. Her fame spread beyond the kingdom of Zambura, and people from neighboring lands came to her for guidance. Even the nobility began to look up to her, seeing how she balanced power with humility. Years went by, and Nyah's kindness and leadership continued to shape Zambura into a kingdom where people cared for one another. When King Adeola grew older and knew it was time for the next ruler to take the throne, he looked to his daughter with pride. She had proven herself as not only a loving daughter, but a wise and fair leader. The people loved her, and she had earned their respect. When Nyah was crowned queen, the entire kingdom rejoiced, but she did not sit on her throne in comfort. Instead, she continued to work with her people, always striving to make Zambura a place where everyone had a chance to live with dignity. She built schools, created jobs, and ensured that no one in her kingdom would ever go hungry or be forgotten. Nyah's story became a symbol of hope for generations. People told her tale to their children, teaching them that no matter how hard life may seem, there is always a chance for change. She had come from nothing, had suffered more than most could imagine, but had risen to become one of the greatest rulers Zambura had ever known. Her legacy of kindness, wisdom, and compassion lived on long after her reign, inspiring people far and wide to believe that one person truly could make a difference in the world. As the years went by, Mama Sefu's name was slowly forgotten. She had been banished from the kingdom, forced to live in exile far away from the place she once called home. Without the power or respect she had enjoyed in the village, she became nothing more than a distant memory. The villagers no longer whispered her name with fear or hatred, but with indifference. The life she had once known was gone, and she was left to face the consequences of her own actions alone. Meanwhile, Nyah's life continued to flourish. As a queen, she ruled with a gentle heart but a firm hand. She never lost sight of the suffering she had endured and worked tirelessly to ensure her people would never face the same hardships she once did. Her story became more than just a tale of a lost princess. It became a symbol of hope, strength, and the power of kindness. People spoke of how she rose from the depths of pain and rejection to become a queen beloved by all. Her tale was passed down through generations, reminding everyone that no matter how dark the road may seem, there is always light at the end of it. As Nyah's story spread far and wide, people learned an important lesson from her life. Fate, no matter how cruel it may seem at times, always finds a way to restore justice. Mama Sefu had once thought she could escape the consequences of her actions, but in the end, the truth came out. She had been punished for the cruelty she had shown Nyah, just as Nyah had been rewarded for her courage and kindness. The kingdom of Zambura became a place where justice and fairness were valued above all else, where people knew that those who do good would eventually find their reward, and those who did wrong would face the consequences. Mama Sefu, far from the land she had once known, lived out her days in solitude, forgotten by everyone except for herself. She had been given a chance at redemption, but her greed and cruelty had led her to ruin. Nyah, on the other hand, had proven that a kind heart and a strong will could overcome any obstacle. In the end, it was her story that was remembered, her name that lived on as a reminder that even in the face of great adversity, fate would always find a way to restore justice.